Welcome back to Big Red Rant, everybody. We're making our way through the position previews. We decided to do the front seven all together because it was just too hard to separate who's going to be an edge and who's going to be an outside linebacker. Before we get into it, hit the like button. Please don't forget to subscribe. Now, Gary, we're changing to a 4-3, and I'm hesitant to be excited about that because our 3-4 worked so well last year. Tell me why you think it's a good thing we're going to a 4-3.
I don't think it matters much, man. I think they're doing it more personnel wise, adding Mathis, things like that. He's not an outside linebacker, but he's not a hand in the dirt defensive end either. So I just think it gives them more wiggle room, if you will, to kind of put more guys that they want out there and that play that hybrid position, kind of like Nelson's kind of like that to an extent. Tanner, different people like that you can move and do things. But I think it comes back to the base package also being a nickel. I think you're still going to see a lot of nickel. Fisher really likes the DBs this year. They've talked about how he's having trouble cutting down to the travel team because there's like so many guys he likes. I think they're going to want to get a lot of the DBs out there. You've got some guys that can go back and forth between, not to jump ahead and make this a DB video, but guys that can play safety and corner, but also guys who can play that slot, can play, safety linebacker type of a combo. So I think it's the same thing with the front seven. It just gives them a little bit more wiggle room. When you go into nickel, you can go back to running a 3-4 style where you go, 3-2 or, 3-3, whatever, however you want to do it, depending on how many DBs you're going to put out. So I think it's just it kind of takes the label off of defensive end versus outside linebacker, especially now that we've added some more true pass rushers, but guys that aren't necessarily traditional defensive ends.
So you remember when the news broke the other day, I think you said you were excited. Your initial reaction was you were excited because you felt like it meant that Frost was adjusting to the players we have, and you feel like he didn't used to do that. Is that right?
Well, just the coaching staff in general. Yeah, I mean, I've heard people talking about it feels like there's more legit competitions at each position, but coaches across the board, one of the things that really bugs me is you get a guy. I always use Michael Vick as an example. When Michael Vick came out of college, went to the pros, we didn't have the running quarterbacks like we do now. And for a long time, I felt like they were trying to force a square peg in a round hole with this guy's a stud athlete. He makes it impossible for defenses to prepare for, but we don't want him to get hurt because he's making a lot of money. So we're going to make him do things that aren't his game. And I feel like Nebraska's done that to an extent, whether it's coaches being in love with the guy they got or promising them things, who knows what, if that happened. If you're going to go out and get these transfer portal guys, especially in a year like this year where you hardly got any recruits on purpose so that you could get direct fixes out of the portal, you go and get the top defensive transfer guy in Mathis. Don't bring him in and have him put his hand in the dirt. Unless he can, maybe we just didn't see him do it at TCU. But I mean, things like that, when you're getting guys that are an A style player, don't force them into a B type system. So if you have to adjust the system and you have to adjust some of the techniques and things like that a little bit so that guys can thrive, we talked about that a little bit in the offensive line video, make it to where guys can thrive, guys can do what you went and got them for, not because, they looked really good on film and they tore it up in high school doing one thing and you think that's going to transfer into what you're doing.
Let's get into starter projections, bro. I want to start with my guy, my favorite player on the defense, Ty Robinson. Dude is just obviously an insane physical specimen. I guess his ceiling is what gets me so excited. Can you tell me what you think his ceiling is so that I don't embarrass myself by telling, I guess where I'm thinking is I feel like he's going to be a better Jared Crick. Is that too much?
No, he's not maybe he'll develop into it and he does show flashes of possibly being that kind of disruptive guy in the middle. But I mean, I think he's more traditional, more of an edge. He played both in high school. When he first started getting time at Nebraska, it was as an end, but not necessarily an edge, like a fast, blow you off the line guy, but just a more traditional defensive end type who's moved to the middle. He's got the size to do it. I'm actually kind of with you on him. As far as ceiling goes, I'd be shocked if he doesn't leave before his senior year to go pro. I think he has the ability the size, all that stuff. He was another one that, I think 4-star coming out of high school. All 3 years that he's been there, the COVID year, he played in every game. He played in every game last year. I think he started more the COVID year than last year, but even his freshman year when they redshirted him, he still played in 3 games. 2 of them were Michigan State and Iowa, and at the time, I think they were both in the top 20. So a lot of people, the thing on him was like, well, you're not sure because he didn't get a lot of time, because he was behind Stilly and Daniels and things like that. But he has experience. It's not like he's one of these guys as a sophomore or a redshirt guy that's coming in it's time. You know what I mean? And it's like, well, hopefully he's developed because it's time for him to get in there. The guy has more than enough snaps over the years that he's been there, especially for being a sophomore. I expect big things from him.
Yeah, he's got experience, and especially compared to the other linemen that we've got. I think Devin Drew, the guy we've got from Texas Tech now through the portal, I think he's the only one with more snaps, and I think he's got him by like 100 or so snaps. So I think it's going to be big. I think if he stays healthy, I think he's just going to be like the heart and soul of the defensive line. Is that fair? You think it's going to be Mathis? Because Mathis is sexy. Mathis got that speed. Mathis is the guy who's going to be getting the sacks, in my opinion.
I don't know if I agree with that. To me, the heart and soul of the defensive line is going to be Garrett Nelson. He's a dog, man, and he's got everything. I mean, he's not, and this isn't a knock. I'm just saying he doesn't have the athleticism of like a Mathis, right? But he's close. You know what I mean? He's really close to athleticism. He has the motor. He has the smarts. I think the big's in the middle, and I also think Mathis drawing attention. And even when Tanner's in there, guys like that is going to help allow him to do more what he can do. I mean, I would disagree with him when you're saying heart and soul. I think it's going to be Nelson. I think
Nelson of course, as we're doing projections for starters, of course, Nelson is starting.
Yeah, he's going to start the edge for sure. And I think he's going to have a big enough year that he goes pro after this season.
Damn. Getting back to the big boys in the middle, got Ty Robinson, and we both agree that Stephon Wynn from Alabama is more than likely going to be his partner in crime on the interior. What do you think of him? I mean, I watched this. I've been watching his highlights a lot lately. Everything I can find. He seems like this is going to be like the weirdest comparison. And of course, I always bring it back to a Husker. But like, he has this like Will Compton, Levante David sort of vision in a big, slower lineman body. I just see him just read things so intelligently and so quickly. Like, he knows where to go, where the ball is going to go. He just has that nose for the ball.
You talking about Wynn?
Yes.
I agree he has a nose for the ball. It's tough for me to draw comparisons with a D tackle and
Of course. It's just a trait that I noticed.
Yeah, I think the big thing with him is his size and his strength. A lot of people I know have said, but he's not real fast. He doesn't have great, like, whatever as far as footwork. That's not really what you're looking for in that type of a defensive tackle. You're looking for a guy who's going to kind of anchor the line, not let the line of scrimmage move backwards, and not to get all into the X's and O's. But when you're wanting to seal off gaps and you're wanting to kind of create funnels for linebackers to run downhill, you need guys like that can kind of force your hand as a defense in that manner. And I think he's shown he can do that. And he can disengage and get off to a side when there is a run, when a running back's coming by him or whatever. I don't think he's there to blow up the A gap and get to the quarterback right in the quarterback's face.
Yeah.
Maybe he can do that. I don't know, but I don't think that's the intent of a guy like that. Especially you're going to be worried more about runs or RPOs, even if it is a pass. So you want to make sure that there just aren't gaping holes along that front. I think he's more than capable of doing that.
On a different level, though, it just seems like I'm excited to get a guy from Alabama. Like, we got two. I don't know. I know it's cool, man. Like, Alabama gets the cream of the crop. They are the ones that get, it seems, all the best talent, whomever they want. They normally do not get turned down, except for who is it? The new Texas A&M coach. Obviously, you got that situation. But it's just exciting. It's exciting. I mean, I don't know. Is he going to be? Why did he leave? Do you know why he left?
No, but I like to kind of play the other side of what you're saying. We've gotten guys that have turned down offers from Georgia and Alabama to come here. And the other side of that is like he obviously wasn't promised he was going to be a day one starter next year, right? So are we getting guys that the team, in this instant Alabama, like he didn't pan out to be what we want him to be. We've got another guy. We've got a freshman that's where we'd rather start over him. No, it doesn't look so good when you're getting somebody else's, runoff or whatever. I'm not at all saying that's what he is or what happened, but I'm just saying like I don't put too much into guys coming here from another school or picking us over another school just because of what the school is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, systems are different, techniques and all that is just what I mean. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's cool. You don't see a lot of guys that are leaving.
Just let me have it.
SEC schools and going to Buffalo or whatever. So
right.
Yeah.
You talked about Garrett Nelson a bit. We know what we're getting from Nelson. Dude is a flat out stud, more than likely going pro sooner rather than later. Not to gloss over Garrett Nelson, but O'Shawn Mathis is new. So let's talk a little bit about him. What are your thoughts on him and where do you see him playing?
If they put him in a position that, from looking at highlights and tape, it's not like I sat and watched a bunch of TCU games last year. So the hype that he's come in with, that's the other thing. Real quick, just to talk about this hype thing. We got Greg Bell on Scott Frost's first year. He was the number 1 overall transfer portal guy, running back. He didn't make it through the season before he left. He didn't fit with the system. He didn't get along with the coaches weren't a fan of him, his work ethic, blah, blah. There was a whole, hearsay of what happened. Ultimately, the guy left. So, I mean, how I am with like the hype stuff. It's just kind of like, okay, whatever, let's see what happens. But watching his film, he's very, very good at what he does. The thing that jumps out to me in every single play you see is his discipline and his eyes. He doesn't bite on RPOs. He doesn't overcommit. He doesn't over pursue the quarterback when he gets around the edge. He just always seems to stay disciplined, keep his eyes in the backfield on the ball, and then he's able to disengage to get back underneath or inside when run plays go, or to spin out of double teams, get off of the edge and get around to the quarterback. Like he seems like he has a very high football IQ. As far as if we're going to do a real traditional 4-3 and he's going to be expected to put his hand in the dirt, I don't know how that goes. I don't know how that changes how quick he can get off the line, how easily he can play leverage as far as inside or outside on tackles. I don't know. A lot of people have brought up the question of how well will he do against Big Ten tackles as opposed to Big 12 tackles, because of the size difference. Well, I averaged out all the offensive tackles from the Big 10 to the Big 12. There's 4 more teams in the Big 12. So take that for what it's worth. There's a 3-pound difference. The average tackle is 3 pounds heavier in the Big 10 than the Big 12. I don't think that's going to make a big difference. It's not like there's 20, 30 pounds difference. And if anything, you could argue a guy who relies on kind of his quickness off the edge, the bigger guy would make it easier for him to do what he does. I think the big thing is going to be the added tight ends and the running backs being more in pass protection when there isn't an RPO in the Big 10 as opposed to the Big 12. And, just kind of see how that goes. I don't know how well he is in actual pass defense if he were to play more of an outside linebacker in certain sets, but if they allow him to do what he essentially got his recognition and hype from, I think we haven't had who was the last really good defensive end as far as pass rusher?
Dude, it's hard to
Gregory?
Come up with a name.
Is it Randy
Yeah,
Gregory?
definitely has to be Gregory.
So I don't know that he's in or on or around that level. It's just it's tough to say. But it would just be nice.
If we're missing anybody in the comments, please let us know.
Mathis doesn't seem like a one-trick pony where it's like line this dude up on the edge and let him just blow by the tackle and get into the backfield. Like I said,
he looks like he sets the
disciplined.
edge properly too.
Yeah, exactly. And he's good at disengaging and getting back to the middle when the play does go to the middle, not biting on things, which means that'll be good in screen games and things like that. So I don't know that I'm as high on him as everybody else is, because I always kind of take that precautionary, like, wait and see how he's going to be used, if he's going to be allowed to do his thing, and not just the size difference, but talent difference on how much better the Big Ten is than the Big 12 outside of, you know, what, Oklahoma. So either way, we're talking about Ty Robinson, we're talking about adding size in Wynn, and we could be wrong on Wynn. You know, there's some other guys we can talk about in a minute that could be the other big guy in the middle. But with Nelson on the other side, I think he didn't have somebody like Nelson on the other end at TCU, right? So, I mean, that's another argument of why he could be as good, if not better, depending on how they use him in this system with the talent he's going to have around him.
Linebackers now. We've got Nick Heinrich, starting middle linebacker, of course.
Yeah.
What's his ceiling to you, real quick?
I don't know. I've kind of gone back and forth with him on things, and not anything against him at all. And where I'm hesitant, it's just that he had, you know, Doman and Reimer, who was like one of the top linebackers in the country last year for sure in the Big Ten. Tanner's one of those edge guys that's pretty good, that can go back and forth and do his thing. So it's like, that's been a strong point. And then, you know, you look at, we haven't talked about the guys we lost. We lost some guys on the line that were pretty good last year, both to, you know, transfer and seniors leaving. But it's, if you're running a real 4-3, you're the middle linebacker. You know, it's not Doman kind of being the quarterback of the defense and he's the other middle linebacker. It's, you're kind of the quarterback of the defense, and you've got to recognize things, call them out or whatever. And from what I've seen of him doing it, he's fine with it. And I don't think it'll be just solely on his shoulders, because like I said, there's just going to be different things and movements and changes throughout, I think. But I'm not worried about him. You know what I mean? I don't worry that, like, oh, I don't know if he can do it, if he can handle it, or how things are going to be. I mean, it's not like he's new, you know, or he was a role player and now all of a sudden he's getting more of a starting position. I mean, he's a solid returning starter that's going to be, you know,
right.
I think it'll be perfectly fine.
And you've got Reimer, of course, on the edge.
Yeah, he's a
strong side.
I don't know, he played weak side. I don't know that matters as much to me. You know, that's more for like depth chart. You know,
right.
Whatever, lining up, things change, and there's motions and things like that where you don't get a lot of switches. So I mean, that's just kind of splitting hairs in my opinion. But
and then who do you got on the other side?
I mean, if Mathis is starting at the end, I would say Caleb Tanner. But if Caleb Tanner's starting on the defensive end, that's the biggest question for me. If you do a traditional 4-3 and you're not going nickel, this makes sense to me that you put Mathis on the end and you let Caleb Tanner stay at the outside linebacker spot, right? But when you go nickel, who's coming off the field? Are you taking Caleb Tanner off? Are you taking Mathis off? You're not taking Nelson off. You're not taking Reimers off. Are you pulling Wynn or whoever the other defensive lineman is, and you're just going back to kind of your 3-4 style with Ty Robinson being your main down guy, and you leave the other guys in, you know, the
right,
the 3 linebackers, then you go the 2 guys on the edge, because then the linebackers move up and it looks like you got a 4-man front. That's what I'm more curious to see. You know, I geek out on defense and I geek out on the X's and O's parts of it and all that stuff. So I'm super curious to see the duration, like more often than not, what sets are they in? Are they mostly in 4-3? Are they mostly in 3-4?
Yeah.
Are they mostly in nickel and some variation of that? Who comes off the field when they do the nickel? I think there will be a lot of nickel and some dime and things like that. So that'll limit what you're doing at the linebacker spot, unless you're going to make the difference up on the defensive line and let the linebackers come up and fill in those spots. So I'm actually like excited. Like I can't wait. And when everybody's watching what Casey Thompson's doing and the, you know, Trey Palmer and all those guys, I'm going to be like, dude, come on, let's get on defense. Cause I want to see.
I always watch the D line.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big defensive back, but the way the cameras go on these games, you barely get to see the setups and everything. But I'm just going to be very curious to see, one, what they start off with, who the actual starters are, if they're in nickel, and then how quick they do things. And then as the season goes, what they want to be in as opposed to what they end up going into based on what the offense is doing. And then the personnel, you know what I'm saying? Like who comes off the field when they have to change personnel and who stays. Oh, Nelson and Reimers aren't coming off the field unless they're hurt or dead tired.
Of course. I'm just so excited because we were so good last year. So
Yeah.
I just feel like if we can get any better, what could that look like? Like how, when you have a truly dominant defense, it can cover up obviously so many warts. If you have warts on offense, for an offense like ours, it's going to be new and, new everybody everywhere.
Yeah.
It would be really nice if they could have that cushion. I'm a Bears fan. That's been my whole life as far as I can remember, is defenses giving the offense a chance to do something all game, even though they are hapless. And I don't think we're going to have a hapless offense, but it could be slow starting.
I mean, you could argue, and I would argue that last year was that. I think without our defense, I think people look at the one-score losses and they go, man, if the offense could have just done this one thing, or if the special teams could have just done this one thing. The defense, in my opinion, is why it came down to a one possession. If the defense was mediocre or not quite as good, I think we'd have got blown out of games. You know what I mean? Like they kept giving them the ball back, and they kept making these stands. And the Michigan State game, where the best running back in the conference and a team that was looking really good until we, up to that point, they didn't get a first down in the second half, and we still lost. It's like that punt that went the wrong side of where the coverage was supposed to be, which is essentially how we lost the game, or why we lost the game. Yeah, but if the offense can score a little bit or do something with all the 3 and outs and the turnovers that the defense was giving them. I mean, the defense was insane last year, and people recognize how good people recognize and say, man, the defense was really good last year. No, the defense was phenomenal last year, but the special teams and offense was so bad, it looked like, oh yeah, the defense was pretty good. I mean, imagine if they didn't have to be on the field as long as they were.
Of course,
imagine if they didn't have to take, 2 or 3 possessions that they did each game. Like, how much better on top of what they did they'd look.
Do you think we're going to be better this year on defense? Or are we going to take a step back? Let's keep it to the front seven. Will the front seven be better?
I don't know that it'll be better. I think it'll be different. I think it'll be a little bit different. I think it's going to look a little bit faster. You're not going to have the big guys we're going to have big guys. We have other big guys.
Wynn is huge.
Right, but how often is he going to stay in there? How many plays in a long series is he going to stay in there? If teams are trying to spread, I don't mean spread like spread out and throw the ball, but I mean like jet sweeps and run RPOs on the edges and things like that, where he's almost negated, or the bigs are negated and you're going in. But I mean, that's why I brought up the DBs. We've got a ton of athletes in that spot that can fly all over the field. I feel like we have that at the linebacker spot now. I feel like adding Mathis and having a guy like Devin Drew. We haven't talked about guys like Blaze Gunnerson, people have talked about him, Hudmaker, Feast, whatever, guys like that are just monsters and are monsters in the weight room, wrestled in high school, have all this thing as far as size and power goes. If they have the technique to step in and do things, we're not just going to be a really good defense. We're going to have depth that, as the game goes on, you're not going to get a break. If our offense does happen to either take a long time to get going, or isn't as good as we're hoping, or there's injuries, on especially on defense, I don't think there's going to be a big break of, like, if you're extending drives on Nebraska for whatever reason, or we get off the field, or I'm sorry, defense gets off the field, the offense goes 3 and out, defense gets off the field, offense turns the ball over, defense gets off the field, and there's usually when things like that happen, you start getting, guys are getting tired, and now you have to start going into your depth, and you have to start rotating guys in. I don't think there's going to be as much of a fall off when that's happening throughout games as there has been, as like maybe even last year as there has been in the past.
Well, man, that pretty much covers everything. Is there anything else you can think of on the front seven that needs to be said?
I don't feel like we touched much of the depth. Again, kind of like we've said with other positions. I mean, literally with some of these positions, especially the lines where there's so many guys, you could talk for hours and hours. As far as previewing, and we're mainly talking about what we think, the starters and maybe a guy or two in is going to be, I feel like that's kind of my prediction, what I said for the front seven. There's some guys, there's definitely enough to talk about with some of the bench guys and the guys who are looking good and might actually end up coming into starting role over some of those other guys and making a couple of those guys role players. But prediction wise, looking at it, you pretty much said it. If I had to guess and lay money on, I would say Mathis, Robinson, Wynn, Nelson, Tanner, Heinrich, and Reimer in the second level.
I agree with all of those. I mean, rarely do we completely agree, but I think you're right on all of those. Tell me and tell us what you guys think in the comments. Does Gary have it right? Or do you see somebody else starting at one of the other positions? Do we miss somebody? Is there something that we're missing here? Thank you everybody for hanging out with us. Hit the like button once again. We will see you guys next time. Go Skurs.